Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Ute Dash. My name is Cole Bagley, the assistant editor of the Daily Utah Chronicle. I'm your host for today's show. I'm joined by the lovely Sammy Mora, editor for the Utah Daily Chronicle. And Sammy, how are we doing this weekend after an unfortunate cancellation of the Utah football game?
I'm sad, still a little sad, but we got some plus sides. We got our shirts.
Yes, represent the must, baby.
Shout out to the must for these lovely t-shirts and the lovely masks we purchased. So that's fun. But, I'm feeling a little optimistic, just literally right before we came on. Our game got flexed to Saturday. I'm optimistic.
The game against UCLA.
Yes, to Saturday. 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Fox.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think they're giving Utah every opportunity to get some positive or some negative COVID tests in so that we've got our full roster, or at least enough to play the football game. And hopefully that extension means it's going to happen.
I remain optimistic. I'm always an optimist. And I think that this is a really good sign for Utah football. But, we'll see how it goes. But that's not what we came on to talk about today. We came on to talk about someone who's very important to Utah football.
Very, very important. The king, the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Whittingham. Sammy, let's get into this. So on Wednesday, November 4th, Utah Athletics announced that Coach Kyle Whittingham had signed a contract extension through 2027. Whittingham, this would be his 16th season as Utah's head coach, 27th season on the football staff. He's actually the longest tenured coach in the Pac-12, which is something to say, and the third longest tenured head coach at the same school in the NCAA. He was a 2019 Pac-12 Coach of the Year, Bobby Dodd National Coach of the Year, and ranked second in Utah school history in wins with a career record of 131-64. In his 26 years at Utah, he has contributed to more victories than any coach in program history with 216. He was the defensive coach for quite a while. Sammy, what does this mean for the Utah football program?
Consistency. Consistency is the biggest thing for the program. It's going to help recruiting because players are going to be more willing to show up being like, hey, the athletic department trusts this guy enough to have him on contract through 2027. That's 7 years, an additional 7 years. So that means that if you're coming in the class of 2021 with everything going on, you should still have Whitt as your coach by the time you graduate. That's something that not a lot of other Pac-12 schools can guarantee, is that you have this coach who's consistent and consistently winning, and the athletic department has faith in him to lead the team for all of these years. Consistency is great. Also, this sets up Whittingham to become the all-time winningest coach in program history. Okay? Ike Armstrong is currently the winningest coach. He has 141 wins. Whitt has 131 according to Utah Athletics. He is 10 wins away. 10. If he can't win 10 games in the next 7 years, there is something that is seriously wrong.
Well, it won't be 7 years then.
It won't be. It won't be 7 years. If he can't win 10 games within, just lock it up, shut it down, we're done. But also, he's well on his way to be the coach to have coached in most games in Utah football history. Again, Ike Armstrong, he coached 211. Whitt is already at 190. If we play any games this season, he will be taking steps closer to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you, Sammy. Consistency is the biggest thing here. It's huge for college programs with the amount of turnover with players. Being able to have such a long tenured coach, it's what makes programs great. Think historically, and think even about now. Guys like Nick Saban, he's in his 13th year. Dabo Swinney is in his 12th year with Clemson. And look at those programs. Look at what those programs have been able to accomplish. Those two programs have been at the top of college football for the last couple of years, especially Alabama, for most of the time that Nick Saban has been there. And so, when you can maintain a fantastic coach, it's huge for the program. You see college athletic programs just chew up and spit out college coaches far too often. And I think that's why certain programs struggle, is because if you can't maintain one guy, if you can't get his coaching style and his play style in for an extended amount of time, the program's going to struggle. And clearly Utah, not just the university, but the state of Utah loves Coach Whitt. And they're so lucky, and it's so great for them to continue to have this guy, not only for as long as we have, but another 7 years.
Also, Whittingham is really, I think it's people would talk about it all the time, but it's worth to mention that there's a lot of coaches in the state of Utah who learned under Kyle Whittingham. Kalani Sitake at BYU, Jay Hill at Weber State, Gary Anderson, before he got fired yesterday from Utah State, was a coach at Utah. Whittingham is good at training these coaches who go on to have successful programs. Weber State is one of the best D2 schools. They're consistently competing for national championships. And I don't say it's all Whitt, but I think the way that Jay Hill learned through this program helped him become that successful head coach. And when you think of college programs, you want to have a coach that people can easily latch onto and recognize. And I think Whittingham is that for Utah. Like Saban is that for Alabama. For some reason, when I think USC, I think Pete Carroll. That's who my brain jumps to.
Well, and even think about down south, the school down south, BYU, Lavelle Edwards,
I think of Bronco too.
Yeah, and Bronco. But I think that, Lavelle was and is the BYU football coach. Everybody thinks. I mean, they named the stadium after the guy. And not that Rice Eccles is going to be changing names to Kyle Whittingham Stadium or anything like that. But
where are they going to put the statue?
Exactly. I think even to this point, you think about Utah football and you think about the great coaches, and it is Kyle Whittingham, but he's gonna even make that more so. He's gonna deepen that. He's gonna really just make it his. And years from now, when Whittingham is long gone, people will think this is the greatest Utah head football coach in the history of the program.
They will walk out on the concourse at Rice Eccles Stadium, right past the new Ken Garff Performance Zone. They will look at the bronze statue of Kyle Whittingham, and they'll be like, that's the GOAT, but also those calves. But he's
had to mention him.
And I've talked about this before with people. Even though Whitt says, when Whitt retires, I don't think Whitt's going to just quit cold turkey on football. I could see him still being an advisor on the team with whoever takes over, whether it's in a defensive role, whether it's in a leadership role. Whittingham is not going to just be able to just be like deuces and then leave. That's just not that's not his personality. That's not who he is. Football is his life.
Well, and I hope for the sake of the program that he does stick around, maybe as a scout or, somewhere in the athletic program. Who knows?
Look at John Pease.
Yeah.
He's been an advisor on the team.
Yeah, he clearly has made his impact on the program. They like what he's doing, and they're only good to come. But what I hope that he is able to win a few Pac-12 championships. That's one thing that I think would really make the statement of this is the guy. This is the legend. This is Coach Whitt. Not that he hasn't already done so, but I think that would really help. And I mean, I don't know about you, Sammy, but I'd love to see a couple Pac-12 championship trophies in the trophy room.
I would love to see that too. But also, I know that Morgan Scalley had his coach in waiting title taken from him with the whole investigation that happened over the summer. But I do think that when Whitt does decide to hang it up, Scalley will have worked his way back up and will have regained that title.
I agree.
Coach in waiting. And I also think that Sharif Shaw is being groomed to become the next defensive coordinator at Utah. I think you have Scalley swoop in, come into that head coaching job, and also maybe he maintains safeties. I don't know. But then you have Sharif Shaw come in and be the DC and maintain his corners group. And it's not it keeps those key coaches that you have, because that's something that high school kids like to see, is that you have these coaches, because it sucks when you get recruited by a coach and then he's not there 6 months after you sign your NLI.
Right. Well, and it helps when the head coaches are grooming their replacements. Whether or not they're fired or if they retire, it's tough if they just get the whole program, right? And so a lot of people would disagree, but I think, and I also hope that it is Morgan Scalley that is the next head coach. I think he's, he does have some room to make up and to maybe regain some people's trust, but I just think
7 years to do it now.
Yeah, and he's learning under Coach Whitt, which who better to learn from than that man. But Sammy, let's move on to our second topic, and we're not going to stop talking about Coach Whitt.
This is the Coach Whitt spectacular. That is all we're talking about all day.
All day. So if you don't like it, get out.
Or don't.
But if
stay,
you do,
stay. Listen to us talk about Coach Whitt because we love the guy. We've
Absolutely.
said it, in Whitt we trust. That is one of the main mantras of this show.
Oh, 100%. So Sammy, what is your favorite Kyle Whittingham memory moment game? Take it away.
I love the Sugar Bowl win. The Sugar Bowl win is so iconic in so many ways. First of all, we came in as an underdog to Alabama, and then we steamrolled them. And it was a fun game to watch. I might have only been 9 years old when it happened, but I do remember watching it with my dad, and that is still one of my most prized memories, is watching that game with my dad, because it was so great to see this team do this. And like even now when I'm older and I appreciate more about the game and I know more about the game, it's still so fantastic to watch that game. They just laid it on Alabama. It was so fun to watch. It's so great.
Oh, it is. And I agree, Sammy. The Sugar Bowl. This was only Whitt's, I believe, 4th season as head coach. He took an underdog team. He beat Alabama handsomely, went 13-0, and arguably had the best team in the nation. I think if there was a college football playoff, Utah would have been the team to beat. Nobody was talking about them at all. But
who was number 1 that year? Wasn't
Florida, was it?
Was it? Continue. I'm going to do a quick research check.
I think it may have been Florida. But anyway, so what I love so much about that game, that season, is nobody was talking about Utah. Nobody was talking about Brian Johnson, Matt Asiata, or Utah really at all. Alabama came in. Everybody was expecting them to dominate Utah. But Coach Whitt just – and this is something I like about him. I think he's able to, more often than not, get his team to play to the level of their opponent. And not only in this game did they play to the level, they played above it. And they were able to grind out a win and surprise the Crimson Tide.
It's iconic. It's iconic. It's an iconic moment in Utah football history. And it really solidified Utah's position as a BCS buster and as a team that needs to be respected. It kind of was the starting point to putting Utah on the map. I think that game was kind of the first step Utah took to get to where they're at now and to be in that Pac-12 and to be in the Pac-12, because they said, hey, look, we might be in the Mountain West, but we ran the table. We're 13-0. We're 12-0 going into this game, and we can roll with the big dogs. Yes, we're underdogs, but look, we can do this. We can win this, and we are the team to beat. And I think a lot of it goes down to Coach Whitt and the mentality that he has with all of his teams is it's always that never sleep on an opponent kind of mentality. Because some teams would see, oh, we're playing Alabama, and would just roll over.
Yeah.
They might put up a fight, but I think they would also just kind of just throw in the towel and be like, we're done. But Whittingham has set his teams up to say, you don't sleep on anybody, you can do this. And it showed in that moment. In that game, it showed that Whitt knows what he's doing. I've never thought that Whitt was not a good coach. He's always been one of, like, he's had his moments where it's been like, it's kind of sus, but 9 times out of 10, Whitt knows what he's doing and does what's best for this program.
Yeah, and I think one of his greatest attributes is Whitt is he knows how to control the locker room. He knows how to get his guys up, to get them ready. The body language from that game. I mean, I remember watching it too. And I was in complete disbelief at what Utah was doing. Fully expected Alabama to just pulverized Utah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was completely the opposite. And it all began with, you watch both teams come out of the locker rooms. Utah is psyched out of their minds. They're jumping up and down. They're screaming. They're yelling. They rush onto the field. And on the other end, Alabama just kind of walks out like,
because they thought they had it in the bag.
exactly. They have this cockiness to them, walking out like, oh, we have like, who's our opponent? Utah. Where's Utah? Who are they? We're Alabama. We're in the SEC. Mountain West. What kind of a conference is that? And yet, from the beginning, Utah's making big plays. They're getting sacks in the backfield. They're shutting down that offense that Alabama was just. They seem so superior. And then you've got Brian Johnson, who had arguably the game of his life. Matt Asiata was running guys down, running them over. And I just loved it because nobody expected that. And yet it was a sellout game.
It's something that Utah fans expected because that's what Utah football does.
Yeah. I mean, Utah fans knew that they were capable of this. And it was a party, It was a sellout crowd. You watch that, and people were just losing their minds. But going back to how Coach Whitt is able to get his guys up for that game, it showed, and they dominated that game. And I think that is by far his best win of his career, 13-0. And I think they were the best team in the country that year.
Quick Google search proved that to be so. Utah finished 0, and then in the national championship game was a 12-1 Florida versus a 12-1 Oklahoma.
Hey, I remembered it. Florida.
Yep. So so Florida won the Natty that year and was 13-1, and it was 13-1, and Utah was 13-0. That there has been a lot of really iconic Whittingham moments though throughout his entire tenure at Utah. There's a special special place in my heart for the first year we made it to the Pac-12 championship. That will always be special to me. Last year's team will always be special to me. But my mind always comes back to the Sugar Bowl game. He's also never, correct me if I'm wrong, Cole, he's never, after the one loss to BYU, he hasn't lost since.
I think he's 11-3.
11-3, yeah. So he basically he's showing yet again why he can coach, and he can take these teams and he can run the table with them. Even when Utah fans were like, oh God, these first couple, the first 5 or so years of us being in the Pac-12 are going to be terrible. He had some really good teams and was coaching these teams like it was like they'd been in the Pac-12 for ages. Yes, they had their bumps and they had their letdowns and the games that we all wish we had back. But at the end of the day, Kyle Whittingham is a fantastic coach. And Utah fans, we all love him and stuff, but I think at times we underappreciate him and what he has done for this program and what he has done for this school.
Yeah, something that's tough is I feel like if Utah ever has a bad loss, or especially in those first couple seasons in the Pac-12, I think 2 years in a row, I think they were 5-7.
That was like fire Whitt town. That was we need to fire him. He's not good for the program and stuff like that. And
it's just not true. Anytime you enter a new conference, especially a Power 5, especially the Pac-12, how are you expecting him to perform, to immediately be at the top or immediately be putting out a winning season? 5-7 was pretty dang good, going from the Mountain West where BYU and TCU were probably, and we steamrolled them, but it was BYU and TCU. That was that was the competition. That was who you measured yourself against.
It's not even like we had Boise State at that point in the Mountain West, because Boise State was in the WACs.
Exactly.
So
you come in, you've got Oregon, you've got USC, UCLA was doing pretty good back then. Stanford was doing very well. Those were back towards the Andrew Luck days. And you expect a brand new team to the conference to do that well? No, but look at what he has done since. And that's actually a good transition to our third topic of the day. Sammy, what are your favorite things about Coach Whitt? What are the things that he does or he's accomplished that really make him your guy?
He's a player's coach. He is a player's coach. He cares about his guys. He fosters such an environment that is a family, Utah football family. And he's also a defensive mastermind, so that's like a side note for me. But the thing is at the end of the day, these are college kids. And why, yes, a lot of them want to, and like a good chunk of them are going to try and pursue a career in the NFL. Some of them don't want to.
Right.
Some of them are on scholarship to get their education and go on and do stuff in the real world. And yes, he makes really good football players, but he also makes really good like men. Like all of his guys on his team are super good dudes. They're all really cool, and he's willing to take chances on kids that other teams would just sweep under the rug and be like, no, I don't want him.
Britton Covey.
Yes, okay. But also I'd like to bring up Darren Carrington. He got kicked off of Oregon, and Whitt brought him onto the team, and he killed it for us. He was so good. Utah's known for giving, and Whittingham and his staff are known for giving kids second chances if they got kicked off their team. If Francis Bernard was in like issues with the honor code at BYU, and he came to Utah, and now he plays for the Cowboys in the NFL.
And was a steal.
It's a steal for the Cowboys. Whittingham fosters great values on that team, and I don't know if it's because of like his LDS background or if it's because he truly cares about these kids, because he cares. He shows that he cares about these kids week in, like day in and day out. He's there for his kids and for his guys.
Yeah, so I've had an opportunity to meet Coach Whitt a couple times. I actually went to high school with his daughter. He is just a great man. He did attend BYU, played football for BYU, but he's not only a coach, but I see him as a mentor, a role model, a friend, and potentially a father figure to some of these guys. He cares about his players on and off the field. Academics is huge. Huge. He doesn't let these guys just come and dink around and just play football. He expects you to perform well in the classroom, because if you're performing well in the classroom, that means you're responsible. That means that you're dedicated and you understand that importance, and that will help you play better on the field. He said that in many different ways, many a times. And one of my absolute favorite things he does, and you touched on this, is the family mentality. Arguably one of my absolute favorite things about him is his pregame locker room cheer, family on three. They do that before every single game, before they go out on the field. And it creates this group mentality, this family mentality, and it sets the tone for the team to play for each other. You're a family. Those are your brothers out there. You have their back. You watch their back.
You're going into battle. You got to have each other's back.
Absolutely. There's no sense of individualism. It's a group mentality. We all have different talents, but we're gonna bring those talents together, and we're gonna be a great football team, and we're gonna win for each other. We're not scoring touchdowns for ourselves. We're scoring touchdowns for our team and winning as a team.
He's done so many good things for the state. He's done great things for the University of Utah. He's done great things for countless players' lives by taking chances on them, by bringing them in, by coaching them. Whittingham is one of my favorite people. I love him. He's just constantly inspiring people to just be the best. And also, like, all like seriousness aside, he's also a really funny dude. Like, I love that. Like, yes, he teases us at media availability all the time, but he's funny. I love him.
He's like the king of dad jokes.
Oh, he's so good. Also, we Utah fans know you love to talk about his calves, because he has magnificent calves, because he's so also
whoever does the statue, when you get to the calves, don't mess up.
Yeah, everything hinges on those calves. Everything. It make or break statue. I don't care if the rest of it looks like garbage. If those calves do not look like calves of steel, I don't want it. Get it out of here.
Calves are more important than how his face turns out.
Exactly.
But Sammy, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier too. I love Coach Whitt's consistency, and clearly the university does as well with how long he's been there and an extension that he's just signed. And not only consistently, but a constant improvement. after the fairly difficult start to the Pac-12 that we talked about, he has led the Utes to 6 straight seasons over 500. He's won the South the last 2 years. He's 11-3 against BYU, which Utah fans gotta love. And he's 11-3 in bowl games. Unfortunately, he's for whatever reason the last 2 years bowl games have just kind of been weird.
I will say this: I have been at all 3 of those bowl game losses, so I low key blame myself. I was at the Alamo Bowl. I was at the San Diego Bowl, and I was at the Vegas Bowl when Boise State creamed us. I was at all 3 of those, so low key I blame myself. But I'm not gonna say that I'm the reason we lost.
Well, I don't think you'll be there this year, so we should win.
Yeah, that pros. Also, we're 0-2 in Pac-12 championship games that I've went to. So
bad luck, Sammy. What are you doing?
You gotta pay the bills somehow, bud. You gotta pay the bills.
But as I was saying, he improves. And even in those I think so the first season in the Pac-12, I think they were 8-5 overall.
The conference was kind of down that year.
Yeah, but then the 2 years following that, 5-7, there were a lot of people that were saying, "Okay, Coach Whitt's,
maybe he's a Mountain West coach."
Right. Maybe he can't handle the Pac-12. Maybe a Power 5 is too much for him. And yet he put his head down. He stuck to things he does best. He started recruiting a little bit better. He changed, some of his tactics, and he turned things around. And like I said, 6 straight seasons over 500, and they've been at the top of the Pac-12 South now for the last 3-4 years. They are not the team that you really want to play. And it's only continuing to get better. And even in a year such as this, where we've had a lot of turnover, where we lost a lot of starters, I expect, regardless of how many games we play, for us to be the favorite in the vast majority of those, and to have another good season, as short as it may be.
Yeah, I had a train of thought, but it just left. So continue. Come back to me in a second.
Okay. I want to touch on the one last thing that I really like about Coach Whitt is
I remember
his halftime adjustments. The last few years, Utah has often been a strong second half team. For instance, the Holy War in 2018, they're down 20-0 at half against BYU. Second half, they outscore BYU 35-7. BYU only scored their 7 points in the third quarter, no points in the fourth quarter, and they ended up winning. Just the halftime adjustments. And there's been other games where it's been the same way. Utah's trailing maybe early on in the first half. They come back and they thump them. And it looks a lot different than how it felt to begin. But I think Coach Whitt is a mastermind of halftime adjustments.
Utah's known for a slow start as a slow start team. We're not like a team who's going to usually march down the field 95 yards and score on the first drive.
Right.
It's a couple of 3 and outs and then we get going. But I remember the point I wanted to say. Whitt is also really good at acknowledging when he as a coach messed up. And that's something that some other coaches won't do. Mm-hmm. He's willing to take the blame and be like, yes, it was my fault that this happened. I shouldn't have done that. But that's huge for me. And also I don't when Utah was going through that rough transition in the Pac-12, we had a carousel of offensive coordinators. It was like a revolving door. They would come in, they would stay a year, and they would get fired.
Right.
And I think Whitt acknowledged that, and Whitt is very cognizant of what is going on in his program, and he knows when it's his turn to take the blame and when it's time for someone else to face the blame.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that you don't often find, because as much as you may not like it, it just seems in sports in general, coaches often either take too much blame or not enough blame. But I think,
or they try and push it onto someone else.
Right. And I think Coach Whitt is the coach that I think he has a really good balance. He knows when he's messed up. He takes blame. And a lot of times I feel like he even might take blame when it's not necessarily his fault. Mm-hmm. But he sees it as, okay, this guy didn't perform. We gave up a certain amount of yards in the slot or whatever it may be. He says, you know, that's on me. I didn't point that out enough. We didn't coach them right this week. We didn't set that up for them to be successful this week. And so that's on me. Go back to the drawing board and we'll figure it out. And he does. And he delivers.
Some coaches will throw their players under the bus, and Whitt is not one of them. Whitt will say at times, yeah, Tyler Huntley didn't play good. Right. Like he will say it, but he is not going to be throwing kids under the bus left and right. That is not who Whitt is. That is not who Whitt has ever been. And that's something that I really love about him, is he knows when to take the blame and when to say, yeah, it was someone else's fault, but it's also my fault.
Right. He's straightforward. He's blunt. He doesn't take people's BS. He's got great calves. We love him.
In Whitt we trust.
In Whitt we trust, but unfortunately, Sammy, that is all the time that we do have today. We want to thank everyone for following us here today on Ute Dash. We want to remind you guys that, again, we have collaborated with Sports Pac-12, where you can find our shows, lots of great articles written. Sammy, we might have to talk to them about getting someone to write an article on Whitt's calves. We'll see how that turns out. Be sure to follow them on sportspac12.com and on Twitter at sportspac12. In addition, please don't forget to check out our website, dashsports.tv. Check us out on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, TikTok, at Dash Sports TV. Thanks again, everyone. Hopefully we'll see some Utah football this week, Sammy, against UCLA. That would be much needed, not only for the program, for the state, for us, for 2020. We need Utah football.
We do. But, you know, this year is just, I'm rolling with the punches this year. And if we get Utah football on Saturday versus UCLA, Utah's going to win. Mascot matchup, Swoop would win because versus a bear. I just like the odds. But anyway.
Shout out again to the Muss. These shirts are amazing. And as always, Sammy, go Utes.
Go Utes, guys.